Well, hey everyone, welcome back to another Wildwoods Beekeeping Live Podcast. Glad to see everybody in the comment section. I noticed a lot of people in the comment section, so I appreciate everybody joining us tonight for our podcast. And tonight we have Greg Burns from Nature's Image Farm. We had Greg on last year, so it's good to get you back on here tonight, Greg, and I really appreciate you joining us.
Oh man, glad to be here. It's an honor to be on here with your channel, sharing with folks about life and talking about bees. And Grayson, I think you do a really good job on your channel, and it's really exciting to see how far you've came in just a short while.
That's right. I've always, think about that. It was really quick right whenever I built up my channel, so it just kind of took a little while, but it went by really quick, and I was able to build everything up and kind of do these live streams where I get guests on to try to learn from, and that's kind of what I try to do here, and I hope people learn from things that we talk about and all that good stuff. But again, I appreciate you joining us tonight, and I am sorry about our my little mess up. I accidentally set the wrong the link to the wrong address, so we were able to get that fixed up real quick and got you on here as quick as we could. And before we do get into some more of the chat, we'll answer some questions, and I have some topics we'll talk about since we're in November, getting here into December. I'm sure a lot of people have some cold weather already there, and we're starting to get a little bit of cold nights here and there, and not really bad, but we're just kind of dipping down a little bit more cooler. But first, Greg, I was wondering if you could just share with us a little bit about you, kind of how you got into beekeeping for some people who may not know you, because I think most of our people in here know you, but for some people who don't know you, I was just hoping you kind of share with us a little bit of how you got into beekeeping and kind of who you are.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about who we are. The short answer is it was my wife's fault, and I say that in such a loving way. It was such an amazing thing that happened, but it's a very long story. It's one that we've shared in private with a lot of folks. We've shared at some of the conferences that we speak at, but a short story long, if possible, or let's maybe go a long story short-ish. Grayson, there was a point in time in our life where we were living life for the wrong reasons, and we bought into this what I call the American scheme. We thought it was the American dream, and we were living beyond our means, and we had credit cards maxed out. Our focus was all on the wrong things, brand new cars and flat screen TVs and all these kind of ways of living. And it wasn't that we were intentionally trying to live out that kind of life. That's just what had sort of happened. And I've been self-employed my entire adult life. And I can remember on a road trip, I got into a really bad car accident that I shouldn't have walked away from. And in all those moments when life is flashing in front of your eyes and you're thinking about all these things and your kids, and have you raised them well? Have I done everything I possibly could for them? Are they going to be able to pay their bills? Are they going to be okay without me? All of these things kind of flash in front of your eyes. And the next thing I know, someone was cutting me out of the truck and trying to pull me out of this horrific truck accident that kind of God spared my life. And in those moments, I realized that every moment from there forward is bonus. From that moment forward, every day is extra. And I had a duty to fulfill, to do better, to raise my family better, to get my house in order, to get my life in order. And from that point on, we decided to get out and stop living the American scheme, get away from living and get away from living beyond our means. So long story short, we packed up. We found a little piece of ground out in the country, a little tiny fixer-upper house, and we started digging in and living closer to the old-time ways. We got into homesteading. We started raising our own produce, our own meat, started doing all of those things right alongside of our kids, not afraid to make mistakes, not afraid to learn right along uh, with them. And Grayson, I know you're on a homestead too, and you can understand all the things that you learn, and it is extremely humbling to be able to live that kind of life, and it's extremely humbling to do that along with your kids and make those mistakes with them. And it was for us an incredible honor to be able to live that kind of life. Grayson, we were kind of throwing all these things against the wall to see what would stick on the homestead. When you start thinking about homesteading and small scale farming, there are so many things that are interesting. Sawmilling and raising meat birds and raising forest raised hogs and turkeys and rabbits and growing fruit trees and all these things that just you want to do them all right now. And we started doing all these things, but we were looking for something that would have a greater financial opportunity that would allow us to not just be sustainable, but to be resilient. We were looking for something that we could do that would help to provide an income to where I could work less on the road and work more locally, and hopefully here with the kids on a piece of ground here on the homestead. And we were driving one day, and my wife looks over and she says, "You know what we need?" And I look back at her and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, what are we getting into? As long as it's not goats, we're good." And she says, "We need honeybees." And at the time, she was buying honey in bulk for the kids and making elderberry syrups and all the things that moms do with honey to help with the overall health of their kids and nutrition and such. And I said, "Yeah, that does sound like a good idea." And so Grayson, my wife, it was her idea. We got started with bees just to um, what we thought would be cutting down the cost of buying honey in bulk. And we started raising bees, and one thing led to another. And we really felt that God tugging hard on our hearts that this is the thing for us. This is the thing that no matter what we did with meat birds or turkeys or pigs, everything had an economy of scale, meaning if we wanted to scale up or if we wanted to grow that enterprise, it would take such an enormous upgrade in infrastructure. We would have to invest way more time into all these things just to get any kind of gains from it as an enterprise. And all those things didn't make sense except for honeybees. Honeybees, there was no ceiling. All there was an open blue sky above where we could grow and grow and grow. We started raising a lot of queens, raising nukes right in the side yard of our homestead. We used to have customers come here to the homestead and pick up their bees, and one thing has led to another, and we've grown what was just a couple colonies to save money on bulk honey to now known for our genetics, raising high quality nukes, high quality queens, and of course, our supplies and our line of wax tipped equipment.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's a great story, and I really loved hearing it. And it's just fascinating about what happens. With honeybees. You can grow fast and everything that you can. What you can do with them, and I love just going out there and just listening to them. And today I was actually able to get out there and just look around and see how everybody was doing, because I wasn't out there for a good while because I was just been busy with other things and around here, and I just never got the opportunity. But today I was able to get out there and kind of look around, and everybody's looking good, and I just love going out there and hearing the bees flying around, and it's just peaceful out there. It's just unbelievable, and I love. I've always told all my guests that who join me, it's I love doing it. And I know they love doing it too, and I really enjoyed hearing that story too. Is you know it's just I don't know what to say. I've always kept bees. I've kept bees for for good while, and just kind of try to keep growing and try to learn from it and learn from your mistakes. That's kind of what I've always preached on the channel. I think most people kind of know that, but it's just love doing it.
Do you really think that they're mistakes, or are they just some lessons are harder learned than others?
I think it's just probably less. Some lessons are learned harder. That's what I think. I think you know because I've had a lot of mistakes. We've talked about that before, and I've went through a lot of different things. I've mentioned it to people how last year I had a bad year, and I've kind of went through a lot of things that I did, maybe wrong or maybe I didn't do right. But I think it was just a lesson that I learned, but in a harder way because
Mm.
I lost like pretty much all my colonies. I only came out with one. Right now I have what like six good strong colonies. So I think I want to try to hang around there, and the next year try to expand. But really, the difference now that I've mentioned a lot to people is that this year I have like much more stronger colonies, and I've been kind of be able to kind of get them healthy and strong here in this time period. And the difference was last year I didn't, and every single one, all the colonies, what was it like last year, around November, around this time, they were all weak and stuff like that. So I kind of learned I need to get my colonies stronger than what I was getting them up to. That was a lesson that I learned, and this year I definitely got some strong colonies. I should have a decent winter, and should get out hopefully somewhat strong.
Down on your neck of the woods, do you guys do any kind of deer hunting down there?
We do. Come to think about that, today I was actually that's pretty much what I was doing today. I was trying to figure out some trail cams and stuff
Hmm.
like that because we have two um plots that me and my granddad set out. So we're planning on trying to hunt some deer this year. I like doing that too. It's pretty fun to do that. We're gonna
Have you
try
ever
to do
gotten
that.
you ever gotten buck fever?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, well, sometimes folks get buck fever, and they get a glimpse of a rack through the woods, or they think it's a big buck, or they think they're seeing all these things here, and sometimes hunters will get buck fever, and it just absolutely takes them over, and they
Yeah,
get this extremely uh, narrow bandwidth of thinking and of sight, and of priority and of goals, and all they're thinking about is getting that big buck,
that's right.
right? They're so focused on only getting that big buck. And I'm going to tell you something. That it's exciting, right? But I've never found a good recipe for antlers. And here, the reason why I ask you that is a lot of folks, myself included, that this is one of those ask me how I know type things. A lot of folks, they with beekeepers, they might not have buck fever, but they have box fever, and all they want to do is grow, 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 grow. Oh, I want to see this six boxes of bees turn into 12, and then to 18, and then to 24. And I'm going to graft all these queens. I'm going to make all these splits. I'm going to do all these things, and they get box fever, and they are just absolutely fixated on this one specific thing. And it's not that the thing in and of itself is bad, but it can be an extreme distraction, and it will cause you to do things that you normally wouldn't do. It'll cause you to make decisions that make no sense. They logically do not compute at all because you are so fixated, so tunnel visioned. Your bandwidth is now so tight. Just focus on this little tiny thing that all this awesomeness surrounding it, you're losing out in because you are just looking for this little tiny narrow thing. And what's interesting about that is I think a lot of us have learned that the hard way, and we've arrived to a point to where we try to focus on quality over quantity. I would rather have, let's say in your scenario, I would rather have six beautiful colonies that are just beautiful, cruising through the winter, coming out of the spring, snorting, ripping, ready to roll, than I would to have 18 colonies that are all struggling right now. They're all weak. They're all scraggly. You're worrying about it. It's eating you up on the inside. Come spring, there's four or three that make it. And of those three or four, they're so crippled for whatever reason that it takes them the rest of the year to kind of build up,
Yeah.
and you're hardly back to where you started. We all focus. We all have that focus issue sometimes, and it's just one of those hard lessons learned.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you know what? That was actually the thing that happened to me last year. I got up to about 16 colonies. I split heavy last year. I did so much splitting because I wanted to get up big because, at that time I wasn't really thinking clearly at that time. I just decided, oh, I want to get up to so many colonies. I'm going to split like crazy. And I did that. And then I had all these colonies, and one by one, they kind of, crippled down. And then going into winter, I only had six. So, I
Mm.
lost 10 colonies throughout the dearth and fall, and here I am with six going into winter, and those colonies are really, really crippled, and they don't look good. They're weak. They're weak because I split them so much. And then when I go into winter, here I am with not strong colonies, and I come out of winter with one. So this year I did have to do splits when I needed to, but I only did them when I needed to. I didn't overdo it whenever I didn't need to. That's kind of what I was going to try to do this year, because I know last year I was wrapped around doing things when I didn't need to. I would say being unintentional. So last year I really wasn't really intentional with what I was trying to do, and then this year I have been more intentional. I have done better. Maybe there's a lot more things I can improve on for sure, but I've done a little bit better of a job this year with that. And now I have, six pretty good strong colonies that are, ready to go, because I just actually took off some of the feed. It's getting kind of too cool at night for feed. So I'm here soon going to start, once it gets more colder here in November and December, I'm going to feed some sugar bricks and whatnot. So that's kind of that. And I was able to learn that lesson the hard way, because here I am at 16, 15 colonies. I think I have it made. I think that everything's going to be good. And here I go, and little did I know the next year I'd only have one of those colonies. So I was able to learn from that, and this year I was able to have a much, much better year and do things when I needed to. So if I had some swarm cells or something, I'd go on and split them because I need to, and that. So I've definitely been in that scenario before. I think most people in here have been too.
If we're honest, a lot of folks will admit that, and that's the beautiful thing is you're right there in that part of your journey where when you allow yourself to be humbled by your experience, you get past all the pride, you get past all of the ego, you get past of the box number chasing, you get past all of the things that hang you up, and you realize that you make a decision and a choice in a bee yard to make a split, to not make a split, to pull a super, to leave it on, to treat or not to treat, or do all of these different things, and you have to do that because those things create experience. And without experience, there's no way for you to know if this thing works or this thing doesn't work. When you know if the thing works or it doesn't work, it creates that experience that now you gain knowledge. When you start stacking those experiences that provide knowledge, that knowledge over time, that knowledge over repetitive cycles gives you the most beautiful thing, and it's called wisdom. And it's only at that point in time that you now have the wisdom of this. And a lot of it is knowing ourselves, knowing that, I tend to push things hard. I tend to get greedy with my splits. I tend to want to grow too fast. But when you have that wisdom, you recognize that with yourself. You recognize that with where your bees actually are, with the weather cycles. And then it gets you to the point to where you start to make better decisions based on the wisdom that you've gained, but it only comes through the knowledge of those outcomes because of the experiences that you have, and all those things stack up. And there are no shortcuts to being successful. There are none. You might find a shortcut to finding success in a certain thing, like you might find a shortcut in instead of grafting queens, you let queens make queen cells and you make queens and splits from that. Like that's a shortcut to finding success. Uh, there are all kinds of little shortcuts that you can find success in, and it's stacking all these different successes that leads you to be successful. And that's the fun part, I think. Grayson, what is it do you think that keeps bringing you back every single year to these bugs in a box? What is it for you?
Well, I don't know really. It's just I think the main thing that really brings me back is the joy of it. I
Mm,
don't make much money off of it. I'm going to try to. I want to make a business out of it. I've kind of made that
sure.
out there. To try to one day make a business, but I
Sure.
kind of want to go slowly at that. But
Yeah.
it's just really, it's really fun to me to go out there with the bugs in the box. These bees. It's really fun just to go out there and look at them and lift up the frames and see what they're doing. It's really cool. It's fascinating what they do, how they work together to make something happen, and that's really what keeps me there. But because I don't make a lot of money off of it, but I do get some honey,
Hmm.
and to kind of get a little money just to kind of put it back
Sure.
into some of the equipment. So I
Yeah.
think the main thing that brings me back is how fun it is to do it, and how fascinating it is to see all these
Mhm.
bees in the box to work together to achieve something, and that's also where I go and say, that's why we have this, why I have the channel. That's why multiple people, that's why multiple people do beekeeping chats to work together to help each other out. So that's kind of what I like to look at, and that's kind of, I guess that's probably a main reason that keeps me here, keeping bees.
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think the next topic I do want to talk a little bit about is I will say, you had me on your live stream a while back about winter strategy. That was really cool to see everybody's strategy. But for my live stream, I kind of want to ask you, what is your winter strategy? What are you doing now to try to keep your bees healthy and keep them strong going into winter?
Oh man, that is a great question. And it's going to be one of those questions that are going to have an incredible letdown if anyone listening is looking for the silver bullet for right now. And the reason I say that is this is me talking through years of experience. That experience led to knowledge, and then stacking up all of those years of knowledge is has created wisdom to where there was a year where the wheels were falling off the bus, Grace, and just nothing was going right. I was starting to accept the fact that I whatever I was doing wasn't working. And here I am, late fall, and I'm looking at all these bees, and I can tell they're light, and I can tell a lot of them are sick, and I can tell a lot of these are not going to make it through the winter time. And I was, so busy with chasing the splits and cleaning up the dead outs and all the things because I was running these bees way too ragged, trying to get way too much out of this experience than what the bees could actually give. And that was a very greedy thing on behalf of the beekeeper. And so here I am, and I'm sitting out in my bee yard, and it's the place where I would go, think, pray, meditate, just kind of get out of myself. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? I've this book says this video says that, this beekeeper says this, and none of them are working for me because I can't sort through it all, and I don't know exactly what I need. And I'm sitting there and I'm just, it was a warm day in the late fall, and the bees are kind of coming in and out of the box, and I'm just kind of focusing on the bees going in and out and in and out, and there's that sound, and I'm sitting there close, and I just focus on that. Next thing you know, I don't know how much time has gone by, but I'm so focused on that that's all that I'm looking and thinking about is that. And I think that's the important thing, is having that thinking chair. And in that moment when I'm able to escape me, I felt the answer came. And the answer was, there's nothing that I'm going to do now to make up for what I haven't done then. And I know that sounds a little wild, but what I felt that meant is that there is nothing that I'm going to do this late in the year that is going to make all the difference in the world for all the things that I didn't do all season long. Well, what does that mean? Well, for me, we had to go back in time to around July and make sure that in July, we're being a little bit more cautious on how hard we're running our bees. We can make splits extremely late in the year, and we still do. It's a different type of split. It's a downsizing split where we take very large colonies, break them down into smaller units, and then as we go through the queen yards, we're getting all the extra queens out and we're introducing those into full size colonies because we're breaking down the bees. Well, what we had learned is we had to stop splitting bees so hard in July and August. That was the main thing. That's one of the things how I get ready for wintertime is we right size these colonies. We start to set them up for success so that when we get into August, going into September, they're already about the size that we want them to be for wintertime. So as they kind of hit that growth curve and they start to kind of brood down, they get back down into that story and a half, a 10 frame deep and a 10 frame medium. They start to get inside of those box sizes to start with. Anything bigger than that, we'll use those as resources to kind of shore up the smaller ones. So that's one thing that we do. The other thing that we started to get really do a much better job was actually mite control. And we did a far better job knocking down mites way earlier in the year. And what we found is when we got serious about mite control in August, in the first part of September, there wasn't really a lot for us to do late in the year, except for a few rounds of oxalic acid. And the bees were really, really clean, and they were doing all the things that they needed to do, making all those winter bees. And then the third thing was making sure that we buffer our local environs, meaning we are mindful of the fact that in August and September in Ohio, we cannot bank on forage. There are some years we have tremendous flows of nectar with late fall. But more times than not, we find that there just isn't, that you cannot bank or count on late fall season nectar for the bees to build up on, which requires us to sometimes do a significant amount of feeding, even if we haven't taken any honey off in the fall time. That's just the way that it is sometimes in some parts of Ohio. So making sure that those bees were nutritionally squared away earlier in the year, what that's done for us is we make sure that these bees are fed up and are nutritionally sound all year. What we had done in the past, Grayson, is we were always playing this horrible game of catch up. It always felt like we were always so far behind that we were in nearly a panic anxiety mode all the time, trying to get the bees caught up, trying to get them to a baseline of production, a baseline of health that we were just chasing so hard. But instead, what we tried to do is make sure that their nutrition was squared away and supplement them before there was a problem, so that when there were stressors, when there were times where there was no food, where there was no forage, they're only dipping a little bit. We can come in, give them a little extra feed, and boom, they pop back up. You know, for anyone who's raised any kind of a ruminant an animal that processes grass through several stomachs, you'll notice that those animals, when they lose condition, it takes them a really long time supplementally to get back up to weight. Bees, I feel like, are the same thing too. So if we can watch them and supplement them as the season goes as needed, when we have those high stress points of no food, we can put a little bit of feed on them, they bounce back quickly and they keep cruising. And what that ends up, you end up going late in the year with all the things that we talked about. You go through, you get into the late part of fall with colonies that are already almost the perfect size because you started that work in July. You have colonies that have very little mite loads because you were on top of that in August. And then you have colonies that are fat and happy, nutritionally sound and are healthy because you've been monitoring their feed all the way through. Those are the three biggest things that we do, that when we get to right now, the only thing really left for me to do right now, we have snow in the forecast. I think it's this Friday or Saturday. The only thing left for me to do is to get any other remaining colonies from any out yards get them back here to the home yard so I can, babysit them throughout the winter here all together. The last thing left for me to do for the year, and it's the last thing, is we put our Hive Alive fondant on every single colony to make sure that they have not emergency feed, but they have insurance feed. And with that Hive Alive fondant on top of the colonies, they can choose to go right past the honey and go right to that fondant on those warm-ish days and feed on that, and it keeps the honey in reserve. And that has made such a tremendous difference for our bees as they build through the winter, as they go to want to explode in the spring. They still have a little bit of they have honey left, so that when the maples bloom and there's pollen coming in, they've got everything that they need on demand, and they go off to the races. So I know that was kind of a long answer. In short, right now, the only thing I'm doing right now is putting fondant on the colonies, the Hive Alive fondant, but all of the heavy lifting has already been done since July until now.
Yeah, definitely. I've started actually feeding 1-to-1 syrup. That's kind of what I do down here. I actually kind of like to do a little bit thinner syrup. I actually did. I started that like in August, maybe even late July, to kind of start bringing up these colonies. These colonies have been I've been getting them brewed up for a while now. So what I'm doing now, I'm done feeding for the most part. I already got done with treating. I'm sure most people are probably done with treatments. I'm guessing. I'm done with my treatments at least, but I'm done with just regular feeding, some sugar syrup feeding, because it's getting kind of cooler at night for that. So I'm kind of done with that. But so like whenever I'm going into a little bit more colder temperatures, like freezing nights or whatever, that we might have 32 or below, even maybe high 30s as well. I'm gonna start feeding just some sugar breaks or stuff like that, just in case if for some reason they don't have enough food. I'll have that in there for them as just a precaution. Just I like to use it for just in case. So that's kind of my strategy. It's nothing much else really to do now. I'm not really inspecting as much anymore. I've just because I've been busy and I've just been kind of kind of just kind of keeping them in there
Mm-hmm.
for the time being, not really open them as much right now. I plan because usually down here, I've mentioned it multiple times, and most people know I can get into the bees, probably in the next couple weeks, even if I want to, because it'll be pretty much nice and warm, down here during the days. But then during the night, it's been kind of getting a little bit more cooler down here. But for most people up north, it's probably nothing. But for us down here, it's been getting a little bit more cooler. But that's kind of what I'm doing, and I think that's what probably most people probably doing as well.
Yeah, I think the big thing for folks to think about is winter strategy starts in July.
Yeah.
You can't wait until November and December to put your plan together, or you're going to probably find yourself in that situation where the outcome come February and March is not going to be ideal for your situation. That's the bad news. The good news is it creates it creates an experience, which then makes the way for knowledge, and then it creates enough wisdom that eventually you say, "Hey, I've done this enough times. The outcome wasn't what I'm looking for or what I want. What do I do different?" And then that's when you start to put new plans in place. And so I don't think that even if you lose colonies, even if you have bees that don't make it, that I really don't even know that that's we don't want living organisms to die if there's something that we can do about it, for sure. And I think that one of the hard things for me to accept is that everyone's on a little bit different path with that, and I don't just mean treat or no treat, but I do feel as though as beekeepers, we are responsible for the health and the well-being of life forms that we bring into our circle of control, our circle of influence. And so I do feel like it is our responsibility to make sure that we're doing the things that we can to help these critters along. Whether that's working towards better genetics, whether that's working towards eliminating mite threats, increasing their health, reducing viral loads, making sure that they're fed. This is different for a lot of us who have ever suffered livestock loss. And I know there's a lot of folks listening who has. But when you have experienced death on the farm from an animal that is due to your negligence, or was due to your stubbornness, or was due to your pride or ego, that puts you into a position where you look at everything that you have dominion over. You look at that differently, and you take that full responsibility, and you know that the overall outcomes, you own it, whether you like it or not. That's on you. And because of that, I think that leads us to making decisions and thinking of things a little bit differently than just taking the easy way out, which is they're just flying insecty bugs inside of a box. Let's not focus so much on their health and their well-being. Let's just throw them into a box and see what happens, or let's throw it into a box and let them figure it out. And everyone has to figure that out for themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you, definitely. Let's see, Gary Stewart. Howdy, Grayson would make Bruce Jenny proud. Thank you, Gary, and I think I would.
I think you would too. With the intentional beekeeping, I know Bruce has really doubled down on that. And you guys both also wear those Atlanta Braves hats together. So I think you guys would be both in good company.
Yeah. Well, the next topic I did want to bring up is I think you and the stream team talked about is proactive versus reactive. I think that's something else that is really important. I've talked about it on my channel before, and
okay,
I think it's really important. So I just wanted you to just kind of talk to us a little bit about kind of what that means and kind of how being proactive versus reactive is important.
Yeah, it's huge. We just with the whole winter strategy approach, setting yourself up to be successful, there are things that you're going to do proactively to make sure that all these goals are accomplished, that all of these criteria are met with the colony. So when they reach the end of their race or the end of their run for the year, that the outcome is positive, or the outcome is what you're looking for. But sometimes we find ourselves in farming, with beekeeping, in life in general, that some folks are constantly living in a reactionary mode where they are waiting around for all of their experiences to throw the cards on the table, and then you are reacting. And that puts you into this hand to mouth scenario all the time with everything, including your beekeeping. And well, what do I mean by that? Well, let's just take social media beekeeping, for instance. Social media is a phenomenal, wonderful tool. It really is, but you're going to get me in trouble, Grayson. It's kind of like the stream team guys. They always ask me the questions that they know I'm going to get myself in trouble on. But so I'm going to say this. But first, let me just say that the views, thoughts, and expressions of Greg at Nature's Image don't necessarily reflect those of Grayson at Wildwoods Honey Bee Farms. Why do I say all that? Because if you have a serious beekeeping question, the most appropriate place for that is not social media. If you have a serious question about beekeeping and what to do next, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be in your best interest to bring that to a public forum where folks don't know your context. They don't know your scale. They don't know your goals. They don't know what type of bees you're working with. And most of the time, if you're the kind of person who you're bringing those questions to social media, you don't even know those things about you yet. And so now you ask a question and you're flooded with keyboard warriors. You're flooded with trolls. There are a lot of folks who actually do want to help, and they're trying to get you some information. But a lot of times you are left more confused than you were before you even started. And that is very challenging. That's living in the reactionary mode all the time. The proactive approach would be to dig into those books. Maybe attend some good bee club meetings if you have a good bee club in your area. Not all places have good bee clubs. There are bee clubs that are full of politics, and they're full of opinion, and they're full of pride, and they're full of ego, right? But there are some good bee clubs out there. The most important thing is to find a good mentor, somebody who is successful keeping bees alive, who wants to pass the torch on. There are a lot of folks out there. There really are. And maybe you can use social media to find those kind of folks. There are some great answers on social media. So don't think that I'm saying it's all bad. It's not baby with the bathwater scenario. But if you're living more proactively, you know that, okay, I've got to be educated. I've got to learn about these bees. I've got to get in here. I've got to figure out what is going on. But being proactive puts you into a position where you know that in the spring, the bees build up. They move towards producing a honey crop. They move towards the hive is so big that they naturally have an inclination to swarm. Once they swarm, they're building back up again. Now they're getting ready for the winter time. At the end of June, going into July, those bees, because of the sun and the position of the solstice, they're now going towards, slowly going back downhill, cruising towards getting ready for winter. If we start to clue in and tune into those things, we can adjust our beekeeping accordingly and do all the things that are really just mirroring and mimicking what the bees are doing. But now we're doing it in the context of we're managing their growth, we're managing that productivity, we're managing them in our bee boxes. And when you do that, you find that your relationship with the bees is more proactive than it is reactive. You're playing a much larger role with what the bees are doing than you feel like you are engaging with a colony rather than invading it. When you're reactive, you never have a grasp on what is going on. You are always trying to figure it out and then patch things up or get things back to a baseline. You're always in recovery mode all the time. And guys, let me tell you, whether it's life, the farm, your family, your marriage, beekeeping, if you are constantly living in a reactive mode all the time, ain't nobody got time for that. That wears you out mentally, physically, spiritually. But getting into a position where you're proactive, you're taking care of the health, the well-being, you're building things up rather than trying to patch them up, it makes a big difference.
Definitely, I agree with you there too. And I see Ricky worked on there as well. Good to see
Oh,
you,
hey,
Ricky.
Ricky.
He said, "Great advice, Greg."
Ricky's a great guy. Him and Ruth, their whole crew, love those guys. They're awesome.
Had him on actually, not too well back. I think it might have been a year ago. Time flies by pretty fast whenever I do these things. I look left to right. I think, hey, recently I did get.
Just wait till you get old,
Ricky.
man. It gets worse. The older you get, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not as old as Ricky. How old is Ricky now? 74, 73? I forget how old he is.
Let's see. Dennis Cheryl has a question. Says, Grayson, have you had any problems with hive beetles this season? Now, I'm going to answer that, and I'll let Greg answer that too as well. This year, I have not had as much as a problem with hive beetles as I did last year, because last year we didn't have a good flow at all, whether it be fall or spring. I think that might have had something to do with it as well, but either way, we had a terrible year last year, and that's was part of why my bees didn't do good last year. And most of it's on me because I split them way too weak, but some of it was on the beetles. But I think the main thing that happened last year was I let the bees get too small. They were kind of weak, and then here comes these beetles coming in to take that over. So that was a big problem last year. But this year, haven't had a bad problem. I'm seeing them right now. I see them on the top. They're going to be there, but I have not had as bad as a problem as I did last year, because last year it was just a mess. They would get in there and make all the slime, all this larva, everything. And this year I haven't really had any of that, but I do make sure I kind of keep looking and make sure I don't see that, because I want to make sure I, keep that under control. I really don't want to go through that again. But Greg, do you have any problems with hive beetles? Because I do know you're up north, but do you have any problems with them?
Yeah, I mean, hive beetles can be a major problem. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Mr. Dennis Sherrill. Got to talk with him on the phone actually today, and it was an honor to work with him. He ordered an entire skid of wax dip boxes that we'll be bringing down to him in probably late January down to the Alabama area. So Dennis, we from all of us here at Nature's Image and Endura Hive, we thank you for your support. As far as hive beetles go, we you typically will hear folks say that all you need for hive beetles is a strong colony in the sun. Now, Grayson, I already gave the disclaimer, the thoughts, views, and expressions, and da 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 da. But let me just say this: that's not true. That is 100% is not true. All you need is not just a strong colony in the sun. What do you mean by that? How you can't just make a statement like that and not explain, right? So what we have found is for many years we would have very strong colonies in the sun that were being absolutely decimated by hive beetles. Well, how is that? Why? What is going on here? And what we had to fast forward, we moved from the old farm here to the new farm, and it's on even though it's only like a half a mile, and I can see one ridge to the other, the soil structure is completely different, and the solar perspective is completely different. Meaning, the orientation of the sun to the landscape is different here than it is at the old place. Well, the first year here, our inspector, and I love him to death, Mr. George Reynolds, was out, and I was cruising through and showing him the areas, and he said, "Oh, you're probably not going to have an issue with hive beetles here." And I said, "What makes you say that?" And he goes, "Oh, you're on the high, dry ground." And he said, "You get into that clay soil, and you're just full of hive beetles." And wouldn't you know, that's exactly the scenario at the old farm. Although we were full sun, we were in very heavy clay soil, very heavy clay soil, that was also anaerobic. There were spring seeps all through this hill, and it kind of kept the soil a little bit dank, a little bit mucky. When you turned it over, it kind of smelled foul. That's just what that hillside was like. And we struggled with hive beetles, something ferocious. Fast forward to the new place, same elevation, a half a mile away, but there's topsoil, and the soil actually drains, and it doesn't stay wet and waterlogged, and we have a far less issue with hive beetles. I think why you've heard it say that all you need to get rid of hive beetles is a strong colony in the sun isn't necessarily the sun, but typically when you have sun exposed to soil, it helps dry it off. I think maybe another way of saying that is a strong colony in the sun on drained soil, I think makes the huge difference. So I think what you find is soil that does stay dank or mucky or it's heavy clay is typically moisture. And that's where hive beetles seem to just absolutely thrive, in those clay soils for whatever reason. So at the new place here, we in the last 4 years or so, we really haven't had a big issue with hive beetles at all. Like you mentioned earlier, when we were getting too greedy with splits, right, and they were too small, they were getting robbed out, or they were queens that maybe never came back on mating flights, and we had too many colonies to get back in and check, and what was there went queenless, and then the laying workers, and then they start dwindling in numbers, and they get robbed, and then all of the pollen and resources that are in the colonies just like ringing the dinner bell for hive beetles. Once we actually started doing better with our beekeeping, the hive beetles started to slow down some. When we got on a different soil structure, we started to do better with hive beetles. And then so now one of the simple things that we do, whether we're using bucket feeders or frame feeders, is we will use for lack of better words, the unscented Swiffer sheets, the dry sweeping cloths. We'll keep those in the colonies on top of the frame feeders themselves. It's really helped with hive beetles tremendously. In the past, when the hive beetles were absolutely out of control, we would make what we called murder sauce or beetle butter, which is a specific type of a mixture to attract and also annihilate the hive beetles inside of the colonies. We just don't seem to have as much of a problem when we kind of tuned up our beekeeping some, got on different soil types. And the only time that we really see hive beetles is after we have those first couple really cold nights. What we notice is all of the where you may have one hive beetle per frame or two hive beetles per frame, and you may not see them during a normal inspection. When it gets cold, it's as though the bees have pushed all those hive beetles up to the top of the box and they got them corralled at the very top. So as soon as you crack open the lid, you'll see the 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever that it might be. But they have seemed to pretty much vacated the actual frame and brood areas or food areas of the colony.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. Let's see here. I do want to thank Richard Jr. there for the $20 donation. I really
Awesome.
appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Keeping bees with a smile, and Amherst. Hope I'm saying that right. Sorry to all the
Amherst, Ohio. All right. Ohio
Ohio.
representing. Love it. That's awesome.
Let's see. Let's see, Michael Buck. Are you ground drenching the area with Guard Star or Grub X?
I'm personally not. How about you?
I've heard of Grub X. I haven't heard of Guard Star. I guess that's how you say it. I've heard of Grub X. I don't use that. I've thought about it, but I've never got to the point to do it. But this year I haven't had a bad problem, like I said. So, but I will get it. I might try it out and see how it works out because I hear a lot of people like it. I think Bruce using it,
Yep.
so I might try it and sub it out. Just be an extra thing for me to have to keep beetles down, just in case if they try to come up on me. But whenever you're saying with the beetles coming up to the top, I have been seeing that a lot since it's kind of getting a little cooler at nights. All those beetles are coming up to the top, and right when I open it, they're going. There's whether it be 10, I think there's not many. Then they all immediately go back in.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so
Yeah.
a lot of times would like to try to take my half tool and smash them, but they run away too fast. I can't do it. But that I've been trying. This year, like I said, I'm so thankful that this year I haven't had a problem. Because last year it was a disaster. Let's see. Paul Hale Have says at Greg, what are the plans for Nature's Image Farm Studios at the North American Honeybee Expo this year?
Man, Grayson, you are quick on picking up the what do you call that? Is that an acronym or what do you call it when it's like the letters abbreviated to the whatever it's called? You're really good at picking up on that.
Oh, really?
What are the plans? Well, the plans are let's say not yet publicly released yet. We're gonna have a lot of fun this year. I've been enjoying releasing the videos from last year. It seems to be we take so much content that it is by the time we get back from the conference, and then we've got our heels dug in on wax dipping and getting all that stuff ready. That by the time we get videos out, it's like by the time we get to the interview videos, it feels like that's not really the right timing for this or that. So it seems as though the lead up to the next year is a really great time to get that content out and get people charged up and ready to go, and the content is just really appropriate, it seems, at that time of year. So what are the plans? We're going to be doing some new things with it. I will tell you that it's going to be a lot of fun. There will be some special guests included, and it'll be fun to see where this little bit different of an approach goes. So Mr. Paul Hale, thanks for the question. And Paul, you can't see it from here, but here in the shop, we've got this, kind of honey wall of fame where the folks who send us honey, it kind of goes and we display it, folks at the expos when they're so kind and give us honey to say thanks, or they'll maybe see them in some videos. Anyways, Paul, I've got you're still at the very top of this this configuration here is these really beautiful. It looks like a wine bottle, but it's a wine bottle full of honey. It's a really beautiful presentation of honey there. So, anyways, great to see your question in there, Paul.
Yeah. Via Honeybees, Tom and Melissa. Good. Thank y'all for checking in, and thanks for checking out the channel. Since I think they just released it. They just said another comment up before this comment saying that they just found my channel. So I appreciate y'all. Watching
The
and
smart one's there on the left there. See the one with the long hair?
yeah.
I think she's the brains of the outfit. If I'm not mistaken, I think she's the brains, and then the guy there, Tom, he's like me. He's like the short story long. Great folks there.
Yeah, great people there, and they ask, Grayson, would you care to explain what your early spring strategy looks like? How early does your management season start in the South? Well, that's a good question, and I next year some of the plans, some of my strategies. Well, next year, let me kind of get to a better thing. I'm kind of bad at answering some questions, but how does our season start? Well, it can start really early. It hasn't even got really cold down here yet, but our season does depend on where it all starts. Like this year, it actually started pretty much in late February, so it started pretty early. Like where at that time, people up north like Greg and Brian and those guys are still hunkered down inside, and we're down here showing off kind of how everything's going on down
Yeah,
here,
showing off.
and
That's it.
people can see what we do down here. But it
Mm.
starts somewhat early down here in Alabama. That's where I'm located, and um, the strategy next year, I'm planning on maybe trying to smallly expand. I don't want to overdo it like I did last year. I'm just want to expand when I need to. So if one of my colony decides it wants to swarm or something, I'll make a split. If it doesn't, I'll just kind of leave them alone. Which most likely, if it, with the way they're looking out now, they'll come out pretty strong and they'll look good and they'll be wanting to swarm next year. So that's what I'll do if they want to swarm. I'll split them up and kind of do that. Um, I actually did a video, so maybe that video will probably mention much more things much better because for some reason I'm able to talk better in videos, or I don't know how that goes, but sometimes that's how it happens. In my videos, I'm a little bit better at that. And in here, live streams, I just go, haywire. I just don't know. I'm not really organized, should I say. But next year, I'm probably not going to do any grafting. Depends. I've mentioned it in the video that it really depends on kind of where I'm at with everything. If I'm in a good situation in a good spot, I'll try to do a little grafting because eventually that's kind of where I want to go with my business. I kind of want to make it a business. Of course, I've mentioned that before. Make it a business and make some money out of it and kind of put it back into my business. Is kind of what I want to aim for, but I'm not in a huge rush. I kind of want to get a good base, should I say, and kind of grow slowly. So over the next couple of years, that's kind of where I want to head. But for next year, that's kind of where I want to go. I kind of want to just um know my limits on expansion. Don't expand too much to the point where it will, ruin my season. Where I'll do the same thing. I don't want to do the same thing. I already learned that lesson. I don't want to go through that again. Um, but that's kind of what I plan to do. And I was going to ask Tom and Melissa, the same thing. Greg, would you care to answer the same question? What is your early spring strategy for next year?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's probably one of my favorite times of year. So sometimes we get to the end of this year, and truth be told, I kind of feel a little out of sorts because you've gone so hot and heavy that when there seems to be less to do, you feel like you're getting behind because you're not doing all the things you're used to doing. I know it's a weird way of looking at that. So, but when spring comes, it sort of fills our sails again, and our cup is full quick because the air smells different and the grass looks different. And there's just something in the air because everything in nature is starting to wake up, and you can feel that and sense that. And it's such a beautiful time to be out there. the strategy for spring is largely in tune with what the trees are doing. So for us in our neck of the woods here in East Central Ohio, we're tuned into the trees and what they're doing. You know, the one of the first things is we'll see some random dandelions that will start to bloom, and then the forsythia blooms. Old timers used to say 3 snows after the forsythia blooms. It's been maybe one the last couple years because of just how wacky everything is. But on right about Valentine's Day, every single year is when we've got some big, beautiful, majestic maples that are just they're really big. They're dug into the hillsides. They've got big roots. They're in tune with like if you think of the soil structure from like the ground down, it's kind of like a calendar. It's kind of like a schedule of events. And so when these trees are deeply rooted into it, they sense and know things that are going on in the soil as far as temperatures and moisture. They know that before we can even see any of that, before any of that manifests. So when we look at the trees for the answers, when we start to see the maples start to darken up, those buds start to swell, start to kind of just as they're opening, we can sense that it's only a matter of time before it's going to fully open and then actually produce pollen. So my early spring strategy is to put some dry pollen substitute out right at about that time, to see what the bees are doing. And then the bees tell me when is go time. When I see the bees just annihilating dry pollen sub, I'll immediately switch to the Hive Alive pollen patties and get those on the colonies because they're ready to move forward. Like they want to move forward. We've learned that we don't wait to do something because somebody on Facebook said to. We don't wait to do something because there was a YouTube video out that said we should. We take action when we watch the bees and see what the bees are intrinsically doing at that time of year. We just follow suit. So when we see the bees devouring pollen sub, that's telling me wherever they're at in their growth, whatever they are planning, whatever they are in need of, they're looking for that extra help as far as protein. So we'll go ahead and put our Hive Alive pollen patties on, and they get built up. They cruise. Well, at that time, we start to get into a couple just real quick, brief inspections in March, just real quick, just to see what's going on. Are they starting to come up some? There are things like dead nettle, henbit, some kind of forest edge species that will start to produce just a little bit of nectar. When we start to see that, we'll usually supplement the colonies that we're going to use for breeders, colonies that we're going to use for drone saturating colonies. We'll start to build all the colonies that we're going to build up to make splits from, to shake bees out of for splits, to shake bees out of for queens. We will go ahead and really start to put the food to them at that time, knowing that our bees that we run are way more frugal and way more conservative. When we see them making the moves, it's the right time. They're the Caucasian and the carnies, right? They're not prematurely going to the dance. They're not prematurely making babies. They are doing it at the right time because they are sensing all those things. So all we do is play to that, supplement that, and let them build up with a little bit of extra help, rather than, let's say, a straight Italian or a more of an Italian-based bee. I mean, when it smells like spring, they are just off to the races, and no matter how much food you give them, they will burn through it to make babies that they can't keep warm. Our bees are a little bit different, so we play to that. We know what they do. We know what the weather is doing. We start to build them up, but we have a couple main lines of delineation, and what that means is we have some colonies that we are specifically not putting any food of any type on, because those are the really good looking production colonies that we know we're going to produce honey off of, and you kind of get a sense for them coming out of the spring, right? There are some that they are already so they are not so far advanced that they're going to swarm early, but you know that you get a sense that they're going to just build numbers right on one of these flows and be just the right size. We leave those ones alone and don't put a lot of feed on. It's the ones that are kind of really, really supercharged. They're a little bit more advanced. Those are the ones that are going to be a little bit quicker to have drones. And you can start to get a sense for that and see that inside the colony. Those are the ones that we actually will put the feed and a lot of the extra attention to, because those are the ones that we want to build and grow so we can have all of those drones, so we can have all that extra brood to make splits, to shake out for queen nukes and things of that nature. Whereas the other colonies are ones that we're setting aside. They're just a hair behind on the drones, which means they're going to be just the perfect size for the honey crop for us. And then there's the third category of bees, and they are ones that are specifically for genetic material. They are specifically, we're watching to see what they do on their own with no help, how they build, what their stores look like, what their drones look like, what their temperament is. And then we kind of evaluate and we'll use those for our genetic grafting material for the rest of that year. So one part is we're tuning things up for genetics. One part is we're letting things kind of be per se as they build for honey. And then we have all the other colonies that we are just letting them go as hard as they want to when they're ready to produce drones and bulk bees.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Oh, looks like we got the man, the myth, the legend, Bruce down there from Dothan, Alabama.
Wow, the Dothan Shogun himself. I wonder if he's wearing an Atlanta Braves hat tonight.
I don't know. He might be wearing that BYU. That's what Paul was saying.
Okay.
So, I don't know, Bruce. You might need to put back on that over Alabama hat. After what?
Oh, is that what the A means? Alabama?
That's what it means right there.
Oh, I thought it was Atlanta Braves.
That's not Atlanta Braves. That's Alabama.
Oh, I think the Atlanta Braves, according to Bruce, the Atlanta Braves is probably a better football team than the Crimson Tide, isn't it?
I don't know about that. I don't know if we need to go that far. But yeah, Bruce has been wearing that BYU hat. Bruce, I think you probably need to go back to the Alabama hat after what happened this weekend. But actually not wearing a hat, no one has to see my... Oh well.
Look, yeah, Bruce, that's what happens.
Yeah. I see Grammy midwives from Ozark, who's actually between me and Bruce. So
Miss Lisa Gowan in the house. Hey, Lisa.
Good to see you, Lisa. We have a good amount of folks on here, and 31 people on here. We'll go a little longer. If anybody has any questions, please do feel free to ask them. We'll go a little longer since we have a good amount of folks in here tonight. Then we'll kind of get closer to ending it here because it's already been 1 hour and 7 minutes. Whenever we do these live streams, it's just unbelievable how fast these things go. And I just we come in here and start from 7 o'clock, and here we already are. It's unbelievable how fast these things go. And Tom Lissa says, "Did the Atlanta Braves score any touchdowns?" I don't think so, Tom. I if I remember correctly, only 2 field goals. So that's unfortunate for them. But let's see. We have absolutely favorite thing about beekeeping ready to go. What's your? I think that's a question there. So, what's your favorite thing about beekeeping, Greg?
Oh man, great question. Barker's Bees and Honey. He's got a great YouTube channel too. Bracken, what is my favorite? It's hard for me to pinpoint because there are certainly, when you crack open that lid, there's a certain sound and smell and buzz, and there is just that connection. So for the actual beekeeping part, I think my favorite thing about that is when you make that connection, you enter this nearly undescribable plane of existence that you're not the same person that you were before you crack the lid, and you're not the same person when you put the lid back on and move on to the next one. When you're inside of that hive and you're in that moment, you're in this very special place that is nearly indescribable. whatever that's called, whatever that is, that is the my I think my one of my favorite things about beekeeping, because it feels as though we are in tune with God's divine ordinance on earth, and in such a pure, holy, if you will, way, that is just, you can't hardly get enough of that. One of the other things that I really love about bees and beekeeping is that bees are the conduit to people, and it brings so many people, um, to us and us to them, where we can share these experiences, where we can be a lighthouse to others. There are so many things I could go on and on, but there's just, no matter how you try to cut it, there's just something special about those bugs in a box. Grayson, what is it for you?
Well, you know, like I mentioned earlier, it's just something different about those bugs in the box. Something I can't really say. Opening up a hive and smelling everything that's hitting you in the face, everything that you see in the hive, seeing all the bees work together. It's really really fun to watch, because I do remember one person did comment on one of my videos saying, if people could work together like the bees would, imagine where we could be. And that's where I think, us beekeepers coming together, working as one, like I said earlier, is something big. And it's something that I think is really great to have, beekeepers coming together. So, you know, it's really hard to pick one favorite thing, but I just think it's the communication that, you connecting to nature, connecting to the bees, seeing what they do. That's kind of what was probably my favorite thing about it, seeing these bees in the box do what they do, working together to make something happen, making honey, raising brood, staying keeping excuse me, working together to keep every single bee alive, even though they're not going to live but a month. That's just something I really like to see. And that's probably one of my favorite things about it.
Great answer.
Thank you. Well, I guess we probably go on and ended up here. Bruce says, "Who BYU? They did score one touchdown, but only one." Yep. Sorry about that, Bruce. I never watched the game, but I heard it didn't really go too well. But that's okay. Um, but anyway, I really do appreciate you, Greg, joining us tonight. It's Oh, before we do leave, I do see one more question, so I might as well answer it. It's from Paul. He says, Greg, bringing in new genetics or keeping it homegrown?
Great question. That is such a long answer, but in short, we are not bringing in new genetics. Absolutely not. The grass is not always greener on the other side once you have got a solid, reference point in your apiary. It took us a little while to develop that solid reference point, and that did take bringing in, some genetics. However, we've also learned the hard way that just because you hear something is popular, just because you hear that something may be a good thing, uh, it can absolutely be catastrophic for you with your bees. That is a really long conversation. We've hinted at it in lots of other ways. Um, Probably not something we need to get into tonight, but it ties into the first part of what we talked about. Is through experience, we're able to gain wisdom, and through wisdom, we're given the knowledge. And so, what we have really decided to do, is that everything that we need, genetically speaking, is already in our stock, because we have colonies that have great hygienic scores. We have colonies that are very frugal, very calm, very productive. All of those things exist with our pool of genetics right here. So, what we will continue to do is breed from the best using tools like artificial insemination in our context, is going to allow us to fast forward 5, 6, even 10 years of time of open mating to continue to flesh that out. What that will let us do is take the very best of these traits and capture drone semen from the very best of these traits in our yard, put those together, and move the ball even further forward than we could with open mating. So we are not going to be bringing in any more genetics. We have exactly what we need right here. We're going to continue to have our bees adapt to this local environment, meaning what we are looking for with these bees. We're going to continue to refine and tune what we have here and make those available for folks. We're going to be doubling down on a lot of insemination this year, and just we're going to keep moving the needle forward, knowing that what we have is right here. We don't have to go import magic XYZ brand of whatever acronym you like into our genetic set to get to the goal line. We're not doing that anymore.
Well said. I do want to real quick before we get to the ending here. I want to thank me again, Joseph Rawls from Louisiana. I think that's where he's from.
Great guy.
Great chat. I was late. We'll have to watch the first half replay. This was a great live stream, and if anybody was late, feel free to rewatch it. It was a lot of good information talked about tonight. A lot of inspiring things for beekeepers to go back and listen to. I believe it was a great chat, and I really appreciate you, Greg, joining us tonight, taking the time to join us tonight. And I appreciate everybody else joining us tonight. It's been a really fun live stream, very, very informative live stream. I learned a lot of things tonight as well from everybody in the chat and yourself as well. And I appreciate you spending the time to join us tonight.
Grayson, it's an honor to spend some time with you and learn from you as well, and all the folks here, tuning in, whether it's now or later. I want to remind folks to just make sure you hit that like, hit the thumbs up. You subscribe to Grayson's channel here, and share this video out. Get more folks tuned in to Grayson's channel here at Wildwoods Honeybee Farm. Let's help grow his channel. And I think these are fun conversations. These so often, live bee chats and conversations are, all about, how did you strain your honey and how did you make the split and those things are important. But what's also really important is to work on our mindset and our heart set as the beekeeper, so that we are in a place when we are working our bees where we can observe and we can learn and we can hear from the bees. We can hear that small, still voice to make a decision to do this certain thing. At the end of the day, it's not about how fast you're growing your apiary. It's not about the perceived number of boxes that you're doing. We are only running a race against ourselves, and we're pushing ourselves. We're challenging ourselves. But really, when you think about it, Grayson, what we're here doing is we are stewards of the land, that we are gifted the opportunity while we are here on Earth to work with these amazing creatures, the honeybees. And it is such an outstanding responsibility to be able to do that and to share that with each other. So keep that in mind. Do the bees, right? But make sure that it's full of joy and happiness. Don't run yourself so ragged where it's a chore, where it's just eating away at you. Find that place where it's joy and happiness. Grow with the bees. Have fun doing it. And Grayson, as always, I just want to remind folks to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time, Grayson.
See you next time, everybody. Thank you all for watching, and thank you again, Greg. Have a good night, everybody.